One of the best feelings in Football Manager is taking a young talent and developing them to the maximum of their potential. Watching their attributes go from rubbish to amazing, watching them go from a prodigy to a superstar is arguably one of the most satisfying feelings in the game and the reason why many of us even play in the first place. And I want more of you guys to feel that satisfaction. So today I'm going to show you 5 tips to help maximize your young players' development in FM26. Now these tips will mainly apply for young players, but some of them will also apply for older players as well. So it will help with their progression too, but we'll be using this Liverpool save as our example today, which was part of a rebuild that I did on my channel as a way to guide you through some of these tips to help maximize that young player development. Before we get into it though, I want to ask you guys one big favor. Let me know in the comments down below your tips that you've got for developing players, because there's still some parts of FM26 that I'm still trying to get my head around. So maybe you found some extra bits I don't mention. If you do, get them in the comments down below. And whilst you're there, hit the like button, make sure you're subscribed as well. Without further ado, let's get right into it, where I am going to start off with the basic tips. Now, if you've played previous Football Managers, you might know some of these things already. Hopefully later on in the video, there'll be some new stuff for you. But the basics of development of your players in Football Manager are 2 things: your facilities and also your staff. Now, I'm going to cover this as basically one tip because it is quite obvious for a lot of people. But if you don't know, in FM, your players use certain facilities to help develop their attributes. If you go to the facilities section through the club screen, you'll get a guide of how good your facilities are. The better your club is, the more likely your facilities will be to be of a higher standard. Like Liverpool, for example, they have superb training facilities and state-of-the-art youth facilities, as well as excellent academy coaching and good youth recruitment. Now, as far as we're talking today, purely in terms of player development, we're only focusing on these here, your training facilities. Now, they are for any active players in your game. It's where they train. Think of it like me as a footballer. The better the facilities are that I'm playing on, the more likely my chance is to develop. If I'm playing on a horrible Sunday League pitch compared to, the England training ground, the England training ground is going to be nicer to play on. There's going to be more equipment available, and therefore I'll hopefully develop my attributes more. And that goes for players in Football Manager too. Any active player that you see in game, whether they're 18 or 37, they will use your training facilities. Your youth facilities are purely to do with youth intake. The same goes for academy coaching and youth recruitment. These are the players behind the scenes that are being generated to join your club when they basically spawn in at the age of 15 or 16. And we'll talk more about them in a different video. But once a player exists in your save, they will be using your training facilities. The better they are, the better the chance of your players developing. Now, if you want to improve your training facilities, it's very easy. You click this Club Vision button, make board requests, and if you can improve them, you'll have the option here. You'll then speak to your board, and depending on how much they like you and how long you've been at the club and your financial situation, they'll either accept or reject your request, and you can do this for any facility in Football Manager. But the better it is, the better the equipment and the pitches that your players are playing on, and the more chance they have to develop their attributes. But on top of facilities, the other main thing driving your players' development behind the scenes are your staff members and their ability. To see this, you go to the club section and then onto the staff screen, which will look something like this. And whilst this is a very bad screen, I'm hoping they'll improve in future updates. Fingers crossed, if you're watching this down the line, they will have. What it's trying to tell you here is the staff at your club. This is your first team. If you click this button here, it will take you to one of your youth teams. So in this case, this is our under 21s and then our under 18s. If you're playing in different leagues, it might be your under 20s, your B team, whatever it is. That's how you see the different staff at your club, by clicking into the screen, and then you can go into different sections. Now you can look at your recruitment team, your medical team, whatever. But in terms of player development, the one that matters is your coaching team, where every single coach, whether they be a fitness coach, a set piece coach, or assistant manager, they'll all have attributes to them that will determine how good they are at helping your players' development. Let's take Giovanni van Bronckhorst here. If we click on him, it used to be you'd have a number between 1 and 20 to figure out how good they were at certain things. Unfortunately, they decided to change that nowadays, and you only get a general understanding based on some words of how good they are at certain stuff. So when it comes to coaching, we can see that Van Bronckhorst here is a very good motivator, average when it comes to his authority and determination, but he's a good defending coach, a very good tactical coach, a very good technical coach, etc, etc. The better your coaches are, the better they're going to drive your development of your players, and that goes from your coaches all the way down to your under 18s coaches and your under 21s. All of them will be affecting the players in their respective squads. If a player's in the first team, he'll be getting coached by first team staff members. If we're in the under 18s, the under 18 staff, the better they are when it comes to their attributes, the better they're going to help your players develop. Now, outside of just looking at staff staff attributes, they used to be a very good way to judge how good your staff was by going into the coach assignment section, and you can see here at the bottom of every section, from attacking tactical to attacking technical all the way down to goalkeeping, you are basically getting a rating of how good your coaches are in that area. So you might be able to notice from this, we've got really good attacking tactical coaches that maybe we need to do a bit of work in the defending tactical to get that up. You get the idea. Unfortunately though, as much as I've tried to look, I can't seem to get this to work where it only shows me my under 21s or my under 18s. So it's a lot less obvious now exactly how good your under 21s coaches are and your under 18s coaches. But in general, the better they are, it's going to help your player development. So please do bear that in mind. But they're the basics really of player development. If you've got good facilities and good coaches, that's a great setup to have your players developing well. But it's not going to guarantee player development. There's a few other things that you'll need to do to make sure that these players develop to the maximum of their potential. So let's move on now to the more interesting tips, hopefully, as we jump into tip number 2. And we're now going to get a bit more in depth as how to successfully develop a player. What's the best way to go about it? Well, really, the first thing you need to ask yourself is how old is the player? Now, personally, I do these tips that I'm about to show you on the real stars of my youth team, the guys that might actually make it. So in this case, maybe these 3 at a push, maybe all these guys here. Would I really be bothered about some of these players and wasting my time developing them? Honestly, in my case, no, but it depends on how hands-on you are and how much you want to get involved. But the main thing we're looking at first is a player's age, and there's a reason why. We'll start off with this 15-year-old, Umberto Dragoni, and explain why you need different development plans for different ages of players. Firstly, between the ages of 15 and 17, they're our first group of players, and why is their development different? Well, because at a young age, they can really develop their physical attributes at a faster rate than anything else. What you normally tend to see if you weren't to get hands-on with a player is that at a young age, their physicals will develop quite a lot, their technicals will start to grow alongside that, and as they get older, their mental attributes will develop as they become an older player. That's not to say that Dragoni here couldn't develop in the mental attributes, he will, but his main growth in those first few years is likely to be in the physical department. And also on top of that, the older a player gets, when they start getting 19, 20, the less likely they are to grow in the physical section. So if you want to improve something in the physical area of someone's game, this is the best time to do it. It's not to say that you never could change a player's physical attributes later on, but in terms of when you'll get the most out of that area of development, the physicals are something that you want to focus on at a young age, between 15 and 17. Well, how do you focus on them? Well, what you want to do is you want to click this training button here, and you then get to view the player's training. Now, we're treating this as a blank slate here. My assistant has been doing most of this development for me, so I'm going to jump in and show you what I would do if I wanted to maximize it. But you get greeted with this screen where you can see a player's attributes, all the other players, and a lot of boxes to click on and things to do, and it might get a bit confusing. But here's what I want you guys to do. Firstly, take a look at the player and see what kind of role you want to play him in. Now, this guy is natural in centre mid. If we wanted to make him natural in a different position, now is the time to do it. The younger a player is, the more likely they are to pick up a different role in the team. But it seems like a central midfielder, wide central midfielder, looks to be his best role currently. I would then check to see if that's something that might fit into my tactical system and start to develop him there. If not, and let's say we played an advanced playmaker, now's the time to start training him in that role. And if you want to train them in that role, all you do is you go to the in possession role and you choose what you want them to do. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to focus in on advanced playmaker, and now when he's in training, he'll be playing that role for the under 18s team in his training sessions, and it's going to allow him to really focus in his development on the attributes of that role. If you look at this screen here, when I change it to something else, if I went for defensive midfielder and asked him to be a deep line playmaker, you'll see different attributes get highlighted and focused in on. So you really want to make sure from a young age they are training to be the role that you want them to play. Now, there is an argument to say that when they are so young, you might leave them without a specific role and just let them develop as a whole player, which might be the way to go if you're not super sure on what you want to do with a player in your team. But I think a lot of us stick and set our tactics. We know what we're going for. We know if we have a ball-winning midfielder or a box-to-box, and it's a good thing for as early as possible to get those players playing in those roles. And now, in FM26, there is also out of possession too. This is something new to the game this year. You can now also choose an out of possession role. So again, you want to have a look at what kind of role he'll play in your tactical system and start training him for that. In this case, let's say it was a wide covering central midfielder, we'd ask him to focus on that in his training to make sure he was honing in on them attributes from an early age. But how do you focus in on a specific attribute set? Well, that is your individual training focus. And when I mentioned upgrading the physicals, this is where you're going to do it. You can see you've got different trainings here, everything from free kick training, if you really wanted to get his free kicks up, to quickness, and many other attributes. but really for a young player, I'm focusing in on those physicals, whether it be their acceleration, which you can do through quickness. There's also strength training, endurance training, agility and balance, and they're going to focus in on different areas of the physical game. I would always say at a young age, try and iron out the weaknesses as opposed to developing the strength. So I'd be looking at his balance, his acceleration, agility and strength, trying to get them up, and that will hopefully mean he has less issues down the line. In terms of training intensity, this is up to you. You can ask them to be more intensive at a young age, but for me, I think that raises the chance of injuries. I always stick to normal intensity, but if you do want to really force a player through it at a young age, you can do that by putting him on double intensity where he'll train more often. One other interesting screen to notice here is the traits section where you can develop a trait for a player's game. It looks like there's already one going for this player, but in standard FM26 fashion, it doesn't tell me what he's training, or at least not in this screen, so that's very odd, but let's assume he didn't have any kind of trait training going on. You can choose a trait for him to learn. The younger a player is, the more likely they'll be to learn these traits, so getting them in early is very useful, and then you can even ask your assistant for some kind of recommendation. Now, what many people don't know is that players in FM have a potential rating. It's the highest potential they'll be able to get to in their save. It is hard-coded, it can't change really at any point, so if he's got a potential of 140 and a current ability of, say, 90, he's got a bit of room for attribute growth, but once it's maxed out, you won't see any more development. So by doing all these things here, we are really focusing in on the areas of his game that he'll need. Otherwise, if he didn't do this, he might really focus in on his free kicks and waste all his attribute points on that, and then he's not really going to be the player that you want him to be later on. The same for traits too. Traits do take up attribute points as well, so that's going to mean that you won't be able to get as good attributes down here the more traits that he has, so do bear that in mind. But all of these things should be considered when training a young player, but things slightly shift when they get to an older age, like Josh Mills here, who's 18 and a lot better of a player, of course, because he's developed his attributes over the years, and now you get to the point at 18 where you have to kind of change your plan for the player a little bit. No longer will you be focusing in on physical attributes. You could if you want to, but they're not going to develop as quickly. But the main thing for Josh Mills now isn't his training in any particular area. As useful as that is, the main thing for him will now be game time. Once a player hits 18, they need to be getting first team football, and that's when we move on to tip number 3, which is all about progression plans for your players. We've covered the staff and the facilities that drive all this attribute growth, and then how you can focus in on specific areas of a player's game to develop them depending on the age they're at. But once they hit this 18 years of age mark, this is where you kind of decide, okay, is this player ready for the first team or not? In most cases, if you're a big club, the answer will be no. Now, if you're a club in a lower down league, a lot of the times these youth players are basically the squad depth options for your first team, because obviously you're going to have less players at, say, Stockport than you are at Liverpool. So those youth players suddenly will be knocking on the door of your first team, where here at Liverpool, Josh Mills is going to have so many players ahead of him despite his talent, but it's time to really think about if he's going to make it into the first team or not. And that's when the squad planner comes in handy. Now, you think it would be in the squad screen. It is not. It is in the recruitment section, and then you go to squad planner. And what this basically allows you to see, for you guys that don't use it, is the depth that you have in each position on the pitch. Now, if you click this button here to suggest for everything, your assistant manager will give you an up-to-date view of your team. So up front, we've got Ekatike, Isaac, and then a few other players who can play there, some breakthrough prospects, and some people in the first team. Normally, you'll have your under-21s and your under-18s of note showing in this section as well. I've unticked them, but for the sake of this video, yes, you do want to have them ticked on. And then you can go position by position to see kind of the level of depth you've got in the squad to determine when that player is going to get a breakthrough. Now, you can also view it in this position screen here, but I'm not as much of a fan of viewing it that way, so I prefer the full squad view for sure. But we were looking at Josh Mills in that attacking midfield position, who is appearing apparently as our 9th best attacking midfield player. Now, obviously, he's not going to be at the top because there's lots of first team players in and around it. Florian Wirtz, Ekatike, McAllister, Isaac, Szoboszlai, Gravenberch, Pablo Torre even. Lots of these guys obviously aren't out-and-out attacking midfielders, and Ekatike and Isaac will likely be playing up front, so there isn't exactly 9 players ahead of him in the pecking order, but it does give you an idea of how far down Josh Mills is. And crucially, the young player in our team getting the chances is going to be this guy called Cal, who's a 19-year-old and far better in his development. So then you look at someone like Josh Mills, and you make the call. In this case, we know he's not going to be part of the first team, and he needs game time at the age of 18. So already, I'm looking at him and thinking, he's a player that we might need to loan, but we'll talk more about loans a little bit later. Let me show you a few of the benefits of this squad screen that a lot of people do not use. So we can see Josh Mills here is currently predicted to be the 9th best attacking midfielder in the team, but he does have potential, and we can kind of see how that potential might develop by clicking this next season tab, as the game gives us an idea of how it expects him to develop in the team as the years go by. So suddenly, next season, Josh has gone from a 1.5 star player to a 2-star player, and as much as you shouldn't really judge these star ratings too much, because every star rating is in comparison to the other players in your team, and therefore isn't an accurate representation of Josh's development, but more so a development of the whole squad, it's still a pretty good guide of how much better he's going to get. So in this case, after another season, Josh will be 19, still 9th choice, but considered a 2-star player. And then if we click season after, you'll see he's not on there because his contract expires in 2 years. So one, we need to think about that. But what we might have saw there is suddenly Josh rises to 5th best in the pecking order, and we start to realise there will be a place for him in the squad as we go on. So it allows you to really plan ahead with your team for every single position. Giovanni Leone here, we can kind of see how he's going to develop over time. He's obviously a bit of an older player, but this screen is really handy because it does give you an idea of these players' expected developments, and we can see someone like Michael Goodyear on the right hand side is never really going to get a look in with the amount of players ahead of him. So again, it's time we start thinking about a loan if he's 18 plus, which he is. He's 18 years of age, so it's time to start thinking about loans in your squad. On the opposite end of that, if you've got a player that's maybe, say, 21, 22, and you realise they're not going to be able to make it in the first team, like Trey Naoni, for example, he's 22, and he's never really going to be good enough for our squad. This is where you move into the next age group, and you decide basically when it's time to sell. So you've got your 15s to 17-year-olds, where you focus really on those physical attributes. Then when they hit 18, you want to make sure they're getting game time, whether at your club or somewhere else. And then when they hit 21, 22, that's your time to evaluate them. They're now too old really to play youth football, so are they good enough for your squad? If they're not, get rid of them whilst you can, because you could still get a good fee. Like Naoni here, nowhere near good enough for our first team, but we could still get £20 million for him because he's only 22. If we get to 24 with a year left on his deal, and he's still looking like this with no real development because he's not getting game time, he's not going to be worth that much. So make the call early. Once they hit 21, that's when you hard set it. You look at the players and you go, are you good enough for the first team? If not, let's move you on and make some money. But for those players that you want to loan out, that's going to lead us nicely onto tip number 4, which is loaning players. Now, so many people out there, when they have a player ready for loan, will go to the transfer screen, go to offer via transfer room, go to loan, and just offer player. Yes, you can do this, and hopefully you'll get some offers, and your players might then move to other clubs on loan, but you're not maximising what you're going to get out of a player's development by doing this. What you want to be doing instead is a few things. Firstly, very simply, and arguably the most important of them all, but so many people miss this out, agree playing time. Please set to regular starter, add a push squad player if they're really getting no game time at all. The reason being is if you don't do this, you're potentially sacrificing player development, because you could agree to a loan to, say, I don't know, Derby in the Championship, they take Josh Mills, we don't agree playing time, suddenly he doesn't get any playing time at all, and then he's not going to develop really at all. So bear that in mind. That's the first easy thing. The second thing that I want you to make sure you've got ticked on is being able to recall a player. Ideally, any loan offer will tick both of these things. The reason I ask for the recall option is because a lot of the time on loans, you'll notice in January, a player just isn't getting on, they're not playing game time, you need to get them back to your team and finding a better loan for them. But how do you know what is a good loan? Well, there's a few things to bear in mind. Firstly, every single young player, if you go to their coach report, will have some kind of rating for adaptability that is hidden under the hood. So this goes for any player of any age, and you should consider this in any transfer you make in, but also any loans that you make out, because under the hood of Football Manager, as much as all these players have attributes that you can see, they also have hidden attributes that affect their personality, which again, we'll talk about in tip number 5 when we come back around to personality. But one of those hidden attributes is adaptability, and how well a player will adapt to a new nation when playing football. Now, this is on a rating of 1 to 20. If it's sitting in the middle of that as an average adaptability rating of, say, 12, 8, 9, 10, it likely won't even show in your coach report because it's not even worth noting. However, if a player has good adaptability, let's say 15, 16, it will show as a pro in this section here. It would say something like, this player is very adaptable or fairly adaptable, and that will allow you to know that if Josh Mills went on loan to, say, Granada in the Spanish divisions, he'll have a better chance of adapting and getting up to speed more than other players that don't have good adaptability. And if a player has bad adaptability, it will be shown in this section here. You can see one hidden attribute is being shown, that he's not a very consistent player. Quite a big issue with young players, to be honest, but sometimes you will see adaptability in here. And if Josh had bad adaptability, I'll be making sure his loans only stayed in the country and didn't go on loan to another nation. So if you're really wanting to make sure a player develops to the maximum, make sure you check to see if they're an adaptable player or potentially not adaptable at all. all. But then it comes to the loaning to a certain club. How do you know if it's going to be a good loan? Well, quite a lot of the time you don't, to be honest, but there's a few things that you should look at. Now, I mentioned Derby earlier, so I'm just going to use them as an example, but what you want to check firstly is any club that you're going to loan to, make sure they've got decent facilities. So Derby, in this case, their facilities, their training facilities are excellent. Now, Josh Mills might be spending a whole year there, so you want to make sure he is going to be training on a good pitch with good facilities and maximising his growth. If Derby had awful training facilities and we had an offer from, I don't know, QPR, who had really good training facilities, I'd then be swayed towards QPR. It's one thing to really bear in mind. The second thing is the squad itself. It's easy to see a loan for a player and just go, yep, sure. But please check that they're actually going to fit into the team. Josh Mills is an attacking midfielder, as we've seen, and we now analyse this for two things. Firstly, we see they do play a central attacking midfielder, which is good, because we're going to want Josh to play in that position. And secondly, I'd say he's better than the other guy in that area of the pitch, so you want to bear that in mind. If we click best position here, in terms of attacking midfielders, it's Freddie Turley and Owen Ames. Again, we look at him. I think Josh is a better player than Owen, and then if we take a look at the other player in that position, I think there was one more, wasn't there? Ewan Griffith, Dale Brown, we'd look at those guys and we go, oh yeah, he's better than them. Josh Mills is a better player, and he also beats Ewan Griffiths as well. So now we can look at this and go, okay, realistically, Josh is going to play. He's going to be better than those players. So if we got an offer from Derby when it came in, I'd be inclined to accept based on the facilities and the fact he should get game time. And one thing that I should also mention in that loan is if you really want him to play in a specific position, please do ask for it. If you wanted him to train as a defensive midfielder, ask for that. You'll then get offers for that position in the pitch. Attacking midfield centre, obviously in Josh's case, would suit him here. But if you wanted to do something different, feel free to. Sometimes I don't put that on the transfer offer because I feel like it's quite obvious where they would play him. But if you're really inclined to make sure he plays in a certain position on the pitch, then you can do so in your loan offer. On top of that, an extra thing about loans that I'll quickly mention is if you have an affiliate team, that can be really beneficial. Think Chelsea and Strasbourg. You can get an affiliate club by talking to your board, and you can see them in the club section. So Liverpool, for example, we don't actually have an affiliate club other than the women's team, but we can go ahead and ask for an affiliate if we want to by clicking this button here. Can we look for a new affiliate? It will help when sending players out on loan. The board says our facilities are good enough. Then you get some options to try and counteract the board. I wish there was one that says, yes, but I'm not going to play the player. I'd like him to play football, which isn't an option, but maybe we'll say give him a reality check and send it out. And you can see they've actually accepted the request. Now they'll go ahead and look for an affiliate club. We'll hopefully get that come through. Usually then what happens is you'll get to pick a team based on a list that you get offered. So we might have Stockport, Doncaster, whoever it is, and we can choose which affiliate club we'd like. Again, I consider facilities, playing style, all of that stuff. And eventually when it's all set up, you'll be able to go to a player like this guy, Linus Weiss, and you'll be able to choose an option here that will say move to an affiliate club. And as long as he accepts a deal, he will go there for the season. I really like having an affiliate club because it sometimes allows you to have multiple players on loan there at once playing together. But obviously it really depends on what kind of team you are if you're going to get an affiliate. Chelsea can have an affiliate to Strasbourg, but a team in the 5th tier of England likely isn't going to have an affiliate to send players on loan to. They might do, but it's a lot less likely. So we've covered 4 things so far, and if you've got any questions, do let me know below. But we've got the youth facilities in the staff, the main base of developing a player, what to do with them at different age groups, loans, and also using your squad planner to really think about the future of these players and when to move them on and maximise both profit and development from your young players. But the final thing is the thing that so many people are missing this year in FM26 because it's been hidden away in a terrible place, and that is mentoring. I mentioned it in one of my mistakes to avoid videos that we've done on the channel, because so many people I know have forgot about it or just assume that someone else is doing it for them. If you don't know, within the training section, there is a mentoring section. As you can see in this Liverpool save, I've not been hands-on. It's been a rebuild where I've simulated, so I haven't been doing the mentoring, but if I was hands-on in this save, I would be. Now, do not be fooled. If you have a responsibility set for one of your staff members to cover training for you, I know many of us do in the responsibilities screen, and you assume they're going to cover mentoring. They do not. Only you can set your mentoring up. It's not covered by your staff, annoyingly, so what you want to do is go to the training tab and then mentoring. Now, for those of you that already know about mentoring, this could be information that you already know, but I think this is so important in a young player's development, particularly for those ones that you want to become superstars, and I'll show you how you do it now. There's 2 options when it comes to mentoring, allowing your assistant to do it for you or doing it yourself. I much prefer doing it yourself, but if you don't have time, at least click the button to ask your assistant to do it. Sometimes it can have negative effects, so that's why I like doing them myself. So what you can do in mentoring is basically have a experienced player rub off his influence on a young player. Let's imagine you had Thiago Silva and Levi Colwill as a Chelsea fan, first one that came to mind. who better to learn off than someone like Thiago Silva? If you're someone that's maybe got a bit of a dodgy personality, likes to go out on the town, and then you've got the model professional in Thiago Silva mentoring you, you slowly become like him. And that is what you can see in Football Manager happening through mentoring too. What you want to do is go based on your team's hierarchy and look for those players that are real leaders in your team or statesmen of the game, whether it's a 38-year-old player that's been around the club for ages, like a James Milner, or someone that's made himself a star like Florian Wirtz at only 26. He's a team leader and he has the personality of perfectionist, a very good personality that any player would love to have. A personality is made up of a player's hidden attributes. It takes into account things like professionalism and whatnot, and determination is also included in a player's personality. So a better a player's personality is, the more likely they are to develop, because they're going to be a more model professional and help both when it comes to situations at the club, but also his development as a player. So therefore, Florian Wirtz would be an excellent mentor. He's got 17 determination and a perfectionist personality. And what will happen is if his personality or determination level is better than that of the player he's mentoring, he will have a positive effect on them. Let me show you. Let's take Florian Wirtz. We will add him to our mentoring group. You can see we've got to click 3 players to have in this group though. I'll then take a look at the young players in the squad. Let's take Cal, let's take Linus Weiss, and for some reason it's unticked Florian Wirtz, so I'm just going to go back and tick him. But that's then going to make a mentoring group of those 3 players. It booted me out the screen, but there you go. The mentoring group is set up, and you can see Florian Wirtz is having a significant effect on Cal and a significant effect on Linus Weiss too. Now in the reverse of that, Linus Weiss and Cal are having a white line to Florian Wirtz, so he is learning nothing from them, but they are certainly learning from Wirtz. And now they've got a fairly determined personality. Perfectionist is a better personality, so therefore this is a good thing. On top of that, determination can be passed down. So Florian Wirtz had, I think, 16 determination. Linus Weiss has a determination of 16 as well. We'll see no changes there, but Cal, if we go on him, he has a determination of 15. So in theory, his determination could raise from that mentoring from Florian Wirtz. Another thing transferred through mentoring are player traits. So if Wirtz has traits such as tries killer balls often, plays 1-2s, we could see that transfer into these 2 players that he's developing. Not always, but it helps. There's a big misconception that you have to have a attacking midfielder developing an attacking midfielder and a centre-back mentoring a centre-back. That is not true. It just helps when it comes to player traits. If you had Virgil van Dijk mentoring these kids, they would still get a great boost from the personality, from the determination, but you won't see the player traits transfer. So if Van Dijk had one for bringing ball out of defence, it would not pass to these 2 players because it doesn't suit their position. So it doesn't have to be position-based when it comes to mentoring, but it can help. But one reason that I wouldn't just let your assistant do it is because when he does, he will set up mentoring groups that might not make sense. And the reason I say that is he is picking mentors based on age and squad status, but let's say Mario Balotelli was at the club. Yes, he might be an important player, but would you want your young players learning off Mario? Probably not. And in the same way that players can raise their personality and determination from an older player that's better, it can also lower too. If Balotelli had 2 for determination, a player with 10 determination under him, a youngster, could watch his determination fall as he becomes more like Balotelli. So make sure they're being mentored by the right players, and you can do that by setting up these kind of things that we've done here. And that's really going to help their mental growth and increase their personality. The better their personality and determination, the more likely they are to develop as a player and be a model professional, and therefore get the most out of their development and reach their potential. So combine mentoring with great facilities, staff members, learning at the right time, the right kind of attribute growth, knowing when to bring them into your first team, and of course doing individual training and making sure they're training in the right role for your squad, and you will see the maximum possible development from these players. It's been a long video, quite a talky one, but hopefully you have found it useful. If you have, smash the like button and come check out my channel, link down below, if you want to see this Liverpool save in a rebuild as I tried to take them to glory in 5 years. Thank you for watching though, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.